Hi, my name is Bob and welcome back to the homestead, y'all. Today I thought we'd talk about coffee grounds a little bit. For years, gardeners have known that coffee grounds are great for your garden because they're very high in nitrogen. Plus, it's a waste product of drinking coffee. My wife and I drink coffee. We have this little bamboo container that we've had for years. You can see it's chipped, it's wore out, and we just put our coffee grounds in here every day. So what I thought I'd do, I have my Blue Lab pH meter, and I want to talk about the pH of coffee grounds a little bit. This is the big question I get all the time from people that either come here to the homestead or I talk to them out in the community about gardening and organic gardening and using coffee grounds. Every one of them, the debate for years and years has been the pH level, how coffee grounds will raise the pH of your soil or lower the pH of your soil. Most people know that coffee grounds, or they think anyhow, that coffee grounds are very acidic. And what we're going to do is we're going to test that today. And we'll use the multimeter here to see exactly what the pH is of these coffee grounds. Now these are Folgers coffee grounds. I've tested probably 8 or 10 different brands of coffee over the years, and most of them come out pretty much the same. So we'll take these coffee grounds, we'll use them for our experiment because our little pot here, it's full, it's ready to go in the compost. Now I could compost most of my coffee grounds. Every now and then I will put them out just on the garden. But if you put them just on your garden, make sure you mix them in with your soil well, because when they dry out, they're kind of like peat moss. They won't absorb moisture. It'll take a whole day or just a real slow rain and a lot of moisture for them to soak that moisture back up. But if you mix them into your soil, then they do just fine. But I like to compost them because they work like a green material in your compost. They'll make your compost hot, especially in the fall months and early spring months when it's not so warm out and not so sunny. It's hard to get compost up to that 150, 160 degree mark that all of us that compost are shooting for. So coffee grounds will help you do that. So that's why I like putting my coffee grounds in every load of compost that I have. But for today, what we're going to do is I have an old Folgers can here. I put a pint of distilled water in here. I'm going to take just one thing of coffee grounds, which is from one pot of coffee grounds, and we're going to put it in here. We're going to take the Blue Lab pH meter, we're going to put it in there, see what the pH is. Then we're going to clean the meter off and we'll put it straight into the coffee grounds and see what the pH shows, just putting it straight in coffee grounds. So to start our experiment, we'll just take one of these coffee filters that's full of coffee, and I'm just going to dump it in here. Go ahead and try to rinse as much of that off as I can. I'm going to put the filter back in here because this is going in the composter. So I want to make sure I compost it. We'll clean this off. Alright, we'll just stir that up. Let it get mixed up good. Then I'm going to flip another one of these coffee filters over. Most of the time we fold these in half when we put them in our little bucket here, so that way it doesn't spill. But we'll go ahead and take the meter. I'll bring the camera closer so you can see what I'm doing. We'll put it in the water first. Of course, like I said, this is just one pot of coffee grounds. And then we'll take it, we'll clean it, we'll put it in this, and let's see what the pH is. Now, before we get started on that, the Blue Lab multimeters, you calibrate them with a solution. This is a pH of 4.0, and this is a pH of 7.0. So I've calibrated my meter. Before I started videoing this, I calibrated it. I pour some of the solution in 2 different containers. You push the calibrate button, put it in the 4.0 solution first, and then you put it in the 7.0 and it calibrates our meter. So we know our meter's reading correctly. So let me go ahead and get the camera, zoom in closer, and you can see what's happening. Alright, so I'm going to set the meter up here, and hopefully you can read it on the camera. If not, I'll tell you what it says. These meters come with a solution and a cap that you keep the pin in. So we'll go ahead and turn the meter on. And then we're going to just stick the pin down in the water. And then we'll leave it there and let's see what it shows. It generally takes about 30 seconds to a minute for the meter to settle down. So you can see now the pH is starting to drop. It's at 6.6. It's at 6.3. Let me move the meter here, maybe you can see it better. Five 5.9, 5.8, 5.7, okay, looks like 5.6, 5.5, 5.6. Okay, it's going back and forth. So that's the pH of distilled water mixed with the coffee grounds. So that's very acidic. You know, that's on the low range for blueberries. So if you're growing blueberries, mix your coffee grounds in some water and pour it around them. Great source, organic source of acid. Now I'm going to go wash this off real quick with some distilled water, and then we're going to come back and we're going to put it in just the coffee grounds themselves. Okay, I've cleaned the end of the pen off, distilled water. Now we're going to turn the meter back on. This time we're just going to poke it down in the coffee grounds and let's see what it says. I'm just going to take and pack those coffee grounds around it a little bit so it makes good contact with the pen. And let's see what the pH is of just the coffee grounds. Okay, you can see it drop down pretty quick. It's at 5.9, 5.8. So not quite as acidic, but we don't have the water to dilute it and to get a good contact with it. But still, you're looking at, there's 5.7. So 5.7 looks like it. Just putting it straight down in the coffee grounds. So these are used coffee grounds. I've done this before with coffee grounds before they went in to the coffee pot, which I don't do very often because coffee is too expensive to do that with, and they test out about the same. So whether they're ran through or not, they're a little bit more acidic. They may drop down to about a 5.2 to a 5.3, but there's not a whole lot of difference. Well, that shows the coffee grounds are in the 5.5 range, between 5.5 and 6. So, you know, any of your acid-loving plants, or you can use coffee grounds on, whether you mix them in water like this or just pour them straight out on the ground. That'll help the acidity level in your soil. That means that's going to drop the pH. That means it's going to be lower. Like your blueberries, if you're a flower grower, your azaleas, your evergreens. But if you're growing something that lacks an alkaline soil, I would not use coffee grounds on them unless you compost them. Now, once I put this in the composter, all the microbes, as it composts down and everything, it'll raise the pH from the coffee grounds. It'll add nitrogen to my compost and your compost. But when you're an organic gardener like myself, I generally don't worry about the pH in the soil because the microbes and Mother Nature will take care of it. I can take this Blue Lab meter and test soil all over my garden, and generally it's in the 6.5 range, which is neutral or close to neutral. It may go up to the 7, 6.5 to 7, depending on how long it had been since I put wood stove ashes on. Now when you put wood stove ashes on your garden, that works like lime, so it's going to make your soil a little bit more alkaline. But generally, anywhere in our garden spot here, I can go around, I can test the soil right directly behind me where this cover crop's growing, and it's going to be in the 6.5 to 7 range. So it's going to be neutral, and most plants grow well, especially vegetables, in the neutral range. Now some of you may be asking, why is pH so important? Well, the pH, if the pH level is too alkaline, then your plants aren't going to be able to absorb some of your nutrients that they need to grow. You know, your zincs, your coppers, your magnesium. And if it's too acidic, then you're really going to have trouble with plants that don't like the high acid levels, because it's not going to be able to absorb your phosphorus. So you want to try to keep your pH level between that 6 and 7 range, or 6.5 to 7.1, 7.2, somewhere in there. Most of your vegetables are going to grow great in that range. That's your neutral range, and that's where you want to keep your soil levels. So if you have any questions or comments about my experiment here, if you think I did something wrong, should have done something different, let me know. This is the way I've been testing soil pH for years. I keep my meter because we use rainwater to water our garden with. And I like to constantly keep a check on the pH of our rainwater, especially once we get into summertime, early summertime, when everybody around the country's been tilling the ground. It releases a lot of carbon in the air. There's people traveling, so you can get acid rain, so your rain is going to be more on the acidic level. And if I water my entire garden with a 5.5 or 6.0 water, then I run into trouble with some of my plants. So that's the reason I use the Blue Lab meter. I keep a constant check on all my cisterns on the water pH. But if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. If you're not a subscriber, please click the subscribe button. If you are, thank you very much for subscribing, and thanks for watching.